slush is totally rad, but my brain is currently buffering. Reason I just walked past the kitchen at the fortress and I noticed a severe lack of perimeter security, a massive security breach. There are just infiltrators, unvetted combatants just grappling with the established hierarchy. We need to lock down the blast doors.
I highly doubt we have a security breach, Hypheria. You need to lower your cortisol levels.
So you have to ask yourself, what happens when the absolute greatest threat to your survival isn't, the enemy at the gates, but the ally sleeping in the room next to yours?
Right.
Because today we are looking at the terrifying math of infiltration, the quiet invasions, the parasites in the bloodstream. Because let me tell you, sitting right here in this tea shop, looking at the ice settling in our cups, I am acutely aware that sometimes the call is coming from inside the house.
Well,
I force them to make this specific taro matcha swirl, by the way, with double tapioca, specifically for you, off menu,
that.
just to get your blood sugar up for the sheer volume of material we have to process today. And
I had a great weekend. I met my lady friend for a John Woo double feature, and her structural analysis of the tea house shootout in A Better Tomorrow was absolutely flawless. Anyway, for the alphabet challenge, I have the letter I.
infiltration. Invaders. No way, insiders. Exactly, which is why we need to audit the guest list immediately.
I was going to say ignition, so let's pivot to the actual audit. We are opening the ledger for January 2004, Part 1.
Watchmen. No, wait, who? Who can we trust? Exactly, which is why we need to audit the guest list immediately.
I was going to say welcome, but let's pivot to the actual audit. We are opening the ledger for January 2004, Part 1.
Wait, before we jump completely into the actual chronological breakdown, you really have to understand the massive context of this era, right?
Correct, because January 2004 represents a period of extreme institutional volatility. You are looking at a fundamental leadership shift occurring at the corporate level, transitioning from an era of creative chaos to one of stable operations.
Right, like the departure of Bill Gemmas. He was this figure whose tenure as president of Marvel was just defined by these high-risk variables that completely upended the traditional publishing paradigm.
Precisely. He spearheaded the Ultimate Marvel line, which arguably pulled the entire company out of the ashes of its late 90s bankruptcy. It created a modernized entry point with zero continuity baggage for new consumers like you.
Oh, wow, yeah, and he heavily pushed the trade paperback model, too, which totally changed how you consume these narratives on your bookshelf today.
Okay.
But his confrontational methodology created immense internal friction, acting as this unpredictable, chaotic variable.
That friction clashed severely with the structural long-term goals of the corporate entity, particularly as they pivoted toward becoming a cinematic powerhouse. His exit left a massive power vacuum that required immediate stabilization.
Which, honestly, is exactly my point about why you can never just assume everything is fine when there is a massive structural shift happening right under your nose.
Well, that brings us directly to the introduction of Dan Buckley as publisher. Buckley was the ultimate logical countermeasure to that preceding chaos.
But a transition of power is never just about distribution pipelines and budgets,
Actually, his mandate was pure operational efficiency. He managed the budgets and locked down the distribution pipelines so that the gears turned without grinding. It was a highly regulated, sustainable infrastructure.
But think about your own life for a second. Have you ever experienced a sudden upheaval at your job or in your friend group where the established rules suddenly evaporated?
It signaled a deliberate, calculated shift away from unpredictable friction, which is essential for any macro logistics operation.
That chaotic transitional window is terrifying because the blast doors of your comfort zone are stuck wide open. Anyone, literally anyone, can just wander into the most sacred, private spaces of your established sanctuary.
You must constantly keep in mind that the real-world architects of these stories were undergoing a massive structural reorganization of their own, bringing capable new variables into the fold to ensure long-term survival.
But when you swap out the old guard for the new guard, you create a psychological vulnerability that is just begging to be exploited by people who do not belong there.
There is absolutely no need for this level of panic.
It is exactly what I was trying to articulate about the kitchen situation before we started this deep dive. You think you know the exact layout of your environment, you think you are safe making a beverage, and suddenly there is just an aggressive, completely unfamiliar presence occupying the tile.
I assure you, the tile is structurally sound.
They are dismantling your sense of security from the inside out. And this overwhelming dread brings us perfectly and honestly, terrifyingly, to our first subject of the deep audit. Pull up a chair, listener. Make yourself comfortable at the table with us, because today's mission is tearing through the Ordered Omnibus for January 2004, Part 1. And the theme screaming at me from like every single page of these sources is displacement.
A highly prevalent structural theme, yes.
Right. We are examining what happens when the bedrock of your reality is totally compromised by outside forces. So we are talking about biological parasites, rewriting your DNA, zealot cults, staging geopolitical coups, covert government psychological operations, and vampires just walking straight through the front door.
It is a statistically dense cluster of infiltrations.
It really is. And on a highly personal note, it also covers what happens when a stranger steps into your sanctuary and makes you feel like a tourist in your own home. Because I finally met her, the Fuurinji of the fortress, the fixer.
The social integration phase.
And she is terrifyingly competent. Like every time I try to secure my tactical advantage in our found family, I feel like she's already mapped the room and moved the furniture.
You are projecting an immense amount of internal anxiety onto a statistically normal social integration. Furthermore, I am deeply concerned by the viscosity of this beverage you have placed in front of me.
It's just a taro matcha swirl.
The structural mechanics of this purple liquid actively defy fluid dynamics. The sheer density of these tapioca pearls presents a choking hazard that is currently setting off alarms in my actuarial tables. Not to mention the high 90s probability of a catastrophic stain on my shirt, given the, frankly, questionable structural integrity of this plastic lid.
Just drink it. You're gonna need the carbs.
I will attempt to consume it, however, because understanding the structural mechanics of infiltration is our primary directive today. While you lament your perceived displacement at the fortress, I am still processing my lady friend's cinematic critique.
Oh, right, the John Woo movies.
Yes, she generally favors the pure kinetic energy of kung fu, but her granular appreciation for the tactical gun fu of a confined space engagement was deeply illuminating. But let us anchor ourselves to the source material. If we are analyzing infiltration, biological displacement is the apex. We must initiate with Exiles Volume 1, Issue 37.
We really do. Fantastic Voyage, Part 3. And listener, prepare yourself, because the psychological and physical horror here is just intense.
Highly visceral.
Yeah. We are looking at Mimic. And for context, Mimic is a mutant who can copy the powers of anyone nearby. But recently, a brood embryo, which is essentially Marvel's version of the xenomorph from Alien, has been secretly incubating inside his chest.
A total biological compromise.
Exactly. And in this issue, the parasite decides it's time to hatch. Mimic realizes his body has become a hostile environment, and he just panics. He abandons Reed Richards, Tony Stark, Ben Grimm, and his teammate morph on the shoreline, and he runs.
Highly irrational maneuver.
But where does he run? He doesn't go to an isolated bunker. He heads straight to Times Square. Because when your biology is betraying you and you are losing your mind, your primal instinct drives you toward the chaotic center of humanity.
Which is a catastrophic tactical failure on every conceivable level. However, we have to look at the mechanism of what Mimic is actually attempting to achieve.
Right, his crazy plan.
He is not merely fleeing blindly. He is attempting to execute a highly theoretical, incredibly dangerous biological stress test. Mimic hypothesizes that if he engages in maximum output combat, the resulting trauma will force his mutant healing factor into an unprecedented overdrive state.
Like trying to sweat out a fever, but with superpowers.
It is the equivalent of intentionally redlining a vehicle's engine to burn off carbon deposits. Except the engine is his cardiovascular system. He squares off against his own team, the Exiles, and this reality's Fantastic Four. But he fails to account for a critical variable.
The brood egg.
Correct. The brood egg is not just a passive parasite, it operates as a biological multiplier.
Right. The brood egg acts like a runaway nuclear reactor. The parasite is the core, and Mimic's powers are the coolant, but the core is feeding off the coolant.
A devastating physiological feedback loop.
Yeah. Normally, Mimic has a limit to how many powers he can copy at once, but the brood infection completely dismantles his internal limiters. He is absorbing abilities from every single superhuman he engages in Times Square simultaneously. The more power he absorbs to fight the infection, the more energy the brood feeds on, which in turn boosts his power absorption even further.
Precisely. He becomes a localized weapon of mass destruction powered by his own infection. Meanwhile, back in the laboratory, the analytical minds Reed Richards, Tony Stark, and in a fascinating structural anomaly for this universe, Dr. Octopus are frantically attempting to synthesize a cure.
It's so weird seeing Doc Ock as just like a helpful lab scientist.
It is a unique universe configuration. They need a hyper-accelerant for Mimic's healing factor. They finally managed to stabilize a compound, but the delivery mechanism is the true logistical hurdle.
Because you can't just hand him a pill when he's leveling a city block.
Exactly. They coordinate a desperate maneuver. Nocturne utilizes her possession abilities to temporarily hijack Mimic's nervous system, causing just enough lag in his reaction time. This allows the thing to execute the payload delivery. And the method of delivery is what makes this sequence medically profound.
Oh my god, this part.
The thing takes a massive syringe and drives it directly into Mimic's eye.
Hazukashi. I cannot even think about it without phantom pain behind my own retinas. But you have to explain the science behind that to the listener, because it's not just for shock value, right? Well, why the eye?
It is entirely practical. In a combat scenario against a subject with reinforced dermal armor and a rapidly adapting physiology, standard intravenous injection is impossible.
Right, his skin would just break the needle.
Precisely. The optic nerve provides a direct, unfiltered highway to the central nervous system and the brain, completely bypassing the blood-brain barrier. It guarantees immediate systemic delivery of the overdrive formula.
Wow.
The chemical payload triggers the hyperimmune response, the healing factor spikes astronomically, and the brood egg is successfully obliterated at the cellular level. Mimic survives. But the victory is entirely hollow when we audit the collateral damage.
The cost of the cure is just devastating, because while Mimic is fighting off the Fantastic Four and his own team, the sheer kinetic force of the battle compromises the architecture of Times Square. A building suffers total structural failure.
A highly predictable outcome of uncontained kinetic output.
And Mariko Yoshida, who operates as Sunfire, steps in. She tries to use her powers to hold up the collapsing masonry, to shield the civilians trapped underneath, and she fails.
Yes.
The rubble comes down, and she suffocates to death in the dark. It is a brutal, agonizing end, and it instantly shatters the team's dynamic. Morph, who had this deep, profound emotional connection to Mariko, turns all of his grief directly on Mimic.
And if we look at the chain of causality, Morph is entirely justified in his assessment. He identifies the core failure immediately.
You can't be serious.
I am. Mimic's not a civilian. He is a seasoned combat veteran. Operational security dictates that the moment you detect a biological compromise, you disclose it to your unit. By hiding the infection, Mimic introduced a lethal unknown variable into a high-stakes combat environment. His secrecy is the direct causal link to Sunfire's death. It is an inexcusable breach of protocol.
Okay, let me stop you right there, because your logic is missing the entire human element. You are treating Mimic like a faulty cog in a machine, but you are completely ignoring the crushing psychological weight of alienation.
I am assessing the tactical.
No, think about it from his perspective. Why did he hide it? Because he was terrified of being replaced. He was already feeling pushed aside within the team. The Exiles are his found family. When you feel like your position in your own sanctuary is slipping, you hide your flaws.
That is an emotional vulnerability that compromised the mission.
You hide your sickness. You desperately try to fix the problem internally because you are paralyzed by the fear that if your family sees how compromised you are, they will cut you loose. Morph's anger is valid. The tragedy of Mariko dying under that concrete is gut-wrenching. But Mimic wasn't acting out of malice or tactical negligence. He was acting out of a desperate human need to preserve his home.
I am fully capable of employing cognitive empathy, and I understand the emotional arithmetic behind his silence. He feared rejection. He feared being classified as liability. But understanding the fear does not mitigate the body count. In a life-or-death operational environment, an individual's personal insecurities cannot supersede the structural integrity of the team.
It's easy to say that when you aren't the one feeling displaced.
The logic remains immutable. Silence is a weapon, and in this case, it detonated and killed an allied combatant. And to further demonstrate the cold efficiency of this system, the universe does not even pause to mourn.
Don't remind me.
We immediately encounter the revolving door protocol. The dust is literally still settling on Mariko's grave when Blink suddenly teleports back into reality to fill the vacant roster spot.
Which is the ultimate psychological insult to injury. Ask yourself, listener, how you would process that. You are a morph. You just watched the person you love suffocate to death, your team is fractured, and the universe just hands you a replacement part like nothing happened.
It is efficient roster management.
It proves that to the system, the found family is just an algorithm. It is incredibly invalidating to the grieving process. It makes you realize that no matter how vital you think you are to a group, The machine will always find a way to patch the hole and keep moving. It is a chilling reminder of how easily we can be displaced.
It is the brutal reality of a continuous narrative matrix. The mission parameters demand a full squad. So, let us initiate the scoring protocol for Exiles issue 37.
Right.
I will apply my boobs and bombs metric, evaluating the delicate balance between visual appeal and tactical violence or property damage. The localized destruction in Times Square is phenomenal. The kinetic output of Mimic, utilizing multiple powers to trigger a structural collapse, scores exceptionally high on the bomb scale.
It was a massive collapse.
However, the visual appeal suffers a massive deficit with a permanent loss of Sunfire. Her dynamic energy was a cornerstone of the book's aesthetic. The sudden reappearance of Blink slightly mitigates this deficit, injecting a familiar visual anchor. Therefore, balancing the massive explosions against the loss of aesthetic value, I award this issue a solid 7.5 out of 10.
I am giving it an 8. The visceral body horror of the ocular injection, combined with the pure emotional devastation of Morph's grief, just elevates it. It is a masterpiece of holodread.
A fair assessment.
But let's pivot. We've examined how a biological parasite infiltrates a host. Now, let's look at how a human infiltrates an impenetrable fortress. We are moving to Elektra, Volume 2, Issue 29, Profit and Loss. And let me tell you, the art of the trap has never been executed more beautifully.
We shift our geographical focus to the island nation of Now, which is currently experiencing a total systemic collapse.
Full chaos.
The geopolitical instability is textbook. You have an exiled queen, a royal princess being hunted through the jungle, and a massive power vacuum. That vacuum is rapidly being filled by a religious fanatic named Piakaloyo and his cultists, who are tactically directed by General Sabi.
Yeah.
They have seized an unmapped mountain fortress, creating a highly fortified, high-altitude choke point.
Yes, and these cultists are completely high on their own supply. They literally believe they have divine protection.
A dangerous operational mindset.
So the issue sets up this tense sequence where the cultists successfully ambush the royal princess's motorcade. They drag her up the mountain deep into this unmapped fortress, convinced they have just secured the ultimate political leverage.
They believe they have the high-value target.
Exactly. You have General Savi out in the courtyard delivering these massive rallying speeches. The zealots are cheering, and the enigmatic prophet Piakaloyo makes this brief, dramatic appearance to bask in the adoration. They think the war is over.
A premature celebration.
Yeah, completely. Because then the perspective shifts. We cut to the captured princess, who has been tied to a chair in a secluded holding room. In one fluid, utterly silent motion, she disarms her lone guard, breaks her restraints, and drops the disguise.
The decoy maneuver.
It isn't the princess, it's Elektra. She orchestrated the entire ambush. She wanted to be captured because it was the only way to bypass the perimeter defenses and get face-to-face with the prophet. Oishi. It is a flawless execution of stealth. She turned their own victory condition into a Trojan horse.
It is a visually striking narrative twist, certainly. However, when subjected to rigorous logistical scrutiny, her methodology is a tactical nightmare.
Oh, come on. How is that a nightmare?
Let us analyze the structural logistics of this lone wolf infiltration. Elektra has intentionally cornered herself inside an unmapped enemy stronghold.
Right.
She is surrounded by heavily armed religious fanatics who operate completely devoid of self-preservation instincts. She possesses zero extraction support, zero pre-placed supply caches, and most critically, zero actionable intelligence on the internal architecture of the compound.
She doesn't need a map. She's Elektra.
Compare this to the structural logistics of the tea house shootout in A Better Tomorrow, as my lady friend so astutely mapped out this weekend. In that cinematic scenario, Chow Yun-Fat's character methodically plants weaponry in the hallway beforehand. He understands the sight lines, the architectural flow, and the exact volume of hostiles. He exerts control over the environment prior to the engagement.
That's a completely different context.
Elektra has surrendered all environmental control for the sake of dramatic entry. The stealth required to neutralize one guard is commendable, but the statistical probability of surviving a sustained kinetic engagement in a confined fortress against an entire army is functionally zero.
You are analyzing a ninja assassin using supply chain management metrics, and it is entirely the wrong framework.
The framework of survival is universal.
She doesn't need pre-planted weaponry because she is the weapon. And you are missing the psychological brilliance of her infiltration. It isn't just about stealth. It is about manipulating the OD loop, observe, orient, decide, act.
I am familiar with the concept.
The cultists are oriented around the idea that their fortress is impenetrable. By revealing that she is already inside their absolute safest space, she shatters their reality. The terror of knowing the monster is already in the house does half the tactical work for her.
Terror does not deflect bullets.
The panic creates the chaos she needs to extract herself. You treat infiltration like an accounting spreadsheet, but it is a psychological dance.
A dance that typically concludes with the dancer trapped in a fatal funnel. But, strictly adhering to the scoring protocol, I must evaluate this on the boobs and bomb scale.
Let's hear it.
The narrative is heavily reliant on tension, rather than massive concussive explosions, which naturally penalizes it on the bomb side. However, Elektra's lethal efficiency, the precision of the stealth takedown, and the sleek kinetic art style significantly elevate the visual appeal. The psychological tension functions as a viable substitute for kinetic destruction. Therefore, I award this issue a highly respectable 8 out of 10.
I am scoring it an 8.5. The sheer arrogance and confidence required to willingly let yourself be bound and dragged into an enemy camp is just breathtaking.
It is certainly bold.
But speaking of psychological manipulation, let's move from military infiltration to something far more insidious. The hostile takeover of a child's mind. We are opening Supreme Power, Volume 1, Issue 4, Assumed Names.
This issue serves as a clinical study in severe behavioral conditioning. The subject is Mark, the superhuman entity designated as Hyperion.
Right.
The architect of his reality is General Casey, the director of Project Hyperion. Casey has run the analytical models and determined that for Mark to achieve maximum utility as a living weapon, he must be completely severed from his human emotional tethers.
It's so gross.
The military requires Mark to view the concept of America itself as his sole spiritual parent. To execute this, Casey orchestrates a covert meeting with Mark's foster parents. He utilizes the ultimate persuasive tool, a massive financial payout, combined with the explicit threat of state power.
Basically a bribe with a gun to their heads.
He pays them to cease to exist. They are relocated to Amsterdam under assumed names, their previous identities eradicated, entirely isolating Mark.
This issue genuinely broke me. You call it behavioral conditioning, but let's call it what it really is. The state-sponsored assassination of a found family. Mark loved them. He believed in them. And to watch General Casey slide a check across a table and politely tell these people to abandon their son is just nauseating.
It is highly effective statecraft.
Think about the analogy of a bonsai tree. General Casey is the gardener, and he is violently pruning away every single natural, emotional branch. The mother, the father, the home, so that Mark's loyalty only grows in one highly unnatural direction, toward the state.
A precise metaphor.
And the most soul-crushing detail. When the foster parents finally land in Amsterdam, carrying their blood money and their new passports, they walk out of the airport and they immediately go their separate ways.
Yes, the structural dissolution of their partnership.
They don't stay together. The entire marriage, the entire family structure they built around Mark was a fabricated construct. It dissolved into dust the second the government cut the funding. It makes you deeply question the architecture of your own life.
How so?
Well, how much of what we experience as love is genuine and how much is just proximity and convenience? Mark is left wandering the earth, mourning parents who are literally sipping espresso in Europe without a second thought. It is the ultimate forced alienation.
It is an extreme application of isolation protocols designed to yield a specific loyalty matrix. However, while General Casey's psychological warfare is terrifyingly effective on paper, we must examine the tactical fallout of this destabilization.
Which is immediate.
Exactly. A superhuman asset experiencing acute emotional trauma is a highly volatile variable. We observe this volatility immediately when Mark is dispatched to investigate a superhuman speedster known as the Atlanta Blur.
Right, the chase over the city.
Mark, entirely unmoored and desperate for a connection now that his parents are gone, hovers over Atlanta. When he finally intercepts the Blur, he doesn't actually want to fight. He simply wants to communicate.
He just wants a friend.
But the Blur, assessing the threat of a glowing airborne entity, executes a rapid evasion and escapes. This failure to connect, combined with the sudden fabricated news delivered by the military that his parents perished in a boating accident, pushes Mark into a state of total emotional dysregulation.
He just snaps. He flies straight to the lake where the military claims the boat went down. He is in the throes of absolute grief. He is desperate for closure, for a body, for anything. And what does he do?
He utilizes his optical energy projection, his flash vision, to rapidly scan the depths of the lake for the wreckage. In doing so, The sheer thermal output of his vision flash boils the water.
It's terrifying.
He violates the laws of thermodynamics, instantly raising the massive water temperature to boiling point, and inadvertently massacres every single fish and aquatic organism in the lake.
A total ecological nightmare.
Now, this is where we must establish a stark boundary between calculated tactical damage and unhinged emotional destruction. Hyperion, conversely, is engaging in pure, unregulated ecological collapse. Obliterating an entire aquatic ecosystem because you lack emotional regulation is not a tactical strike. It is an environmental disaster fueled by a temper tantrum.
A temper tantrum. His parents are dead. Or at least, his reality dictates that they are dead. You expect a teenager possessing godlike power who just had his entire foundational reality shattered to operate like a precision drone.
I expect a military asset to maintain parameter control.
Of course he lost control. It's the explosive release of repressed trauma, not a calculated military strike. But fine, you want to analyze the cold hard numbers? Score it.
I will do exactly that. This issue is heavily weighted towards psychological exposition and dialogue, which naturally depresses the score on the boobs and bombs metric due to a severe lack of kinetic action.
Unsurprising.
However, the sheer scale of the environmental destruction, the thermodynamic flash boiling of a massive body of water and the resulting mass casualty event provides a massive, unexpected spike in the bombs category. The unhinged property damage alone elevates this narrative. Therefore, I award Supreme Power Issue 4 a 7 out of 10.
I give it a 9 entirely for the psychological trauma and the terrifying portrayal of governmental gaslighting. But we aren't done with Infiltration yet, because sometimes the threat isn't the government, or an alien, or a ninja.
Well,
sometimes you open the front door and invite the threat directly into your sanctuary. Which brings us to Runaways, Issue 8, Topher's Betrayal.
Ah, yes. The infiltration of the hostile. The Runaways, a group of superpowered adolescents hiding from their villainous parents, discover a seemingly innocent teenager named Topher stranded in Los Angeles. Against their own established security protocols, they grant him access to their hidden subterranean base.
Because he plays the victim perfectly. Topher doesn't pick the lock, he social engineers his way inside. He exploits their empathy.
A classic vector.
The moment he crosses the threshold, he begins systematically dismantling their social cohesion. He flirts with Nico, he flirts with Carolina, he pits the team members against each other, sowing jealousy and paranoia, and then the horrific reveal. Topher isn't a runaway, he is a 100-year-old vampire.
A biological parasite masking as a peer.
Exactly, and this is what I have been trying to articulate all day. The mythology of the vampire is exactly what we are discussing. A vampire cannot enter your house unless they are invited. The danger of trusting the wrong person, of letting an outsider bypass your emotional perimeter, is that they will drain the life out of your found family from the inside.
Metaphorically and literally.
Yes. When you let someone new into the fortress, you never truly know if they're there to support the structure or to consume it.
From a structural perspective, Topher's methodology is flawless. He identifies the load-bearing emotional pillars of the group Nico and Carolina and applies precise pressure to fracture them. It is a textbook destabilization campaign.
Right.
However, his ultimate failure is hubris. He attempts to consume the blood of Carolina Dean, failing to recognize that her physiology is composed of pure solar energy.
Oops.
He essentially ingests sunlight, resulting in his immediate, explosive combustion. On the boobs and bombs scale, the interpersonal drama is low yield, but the sudden, violent immolation of a vampire via solar blood injection is a spectacularly high-value kinetic event. I scored an 8 out of 10.
I am giving it an 8.5. The tension of watching a predator operate disguised as a friend is chilling. But listening to you critique Topher's strategy of identifying load-bearing pillars really triggers a memory. I was at the fortress recently, and the Fuurinji Trina was doing this intensely specific breakdown of close quarters combat. She's talking about sightlines, kinetic energy transfer, and the absolute necessity of pre-planning your exits relative to the architectural load-bearing pillars of a room. It was intense. She is exceptionally observant.
That is a fundamental principle of structural engagement.
Yep.
It is precisely what my lady friend was articulating during the tea house shootout in A Better Tomorrow.
Really?
She paused the film, literally halted the playback, to map out the structural logistics of Chow Yun-Fat's positioning relative to those exact load-bearing pillars. She noted that his preference for dual-wielding handguns in that specific hallway was mathematically optimal for crowd control, even though she generally prefers the fluidity of hand-to-hand kung fu. It is rare to find an individual who appreciates the pure mathematics of a cinematic gunfight.
Wait, She paused the movie to map out the load-bearing pillars?
Yes. She possesses a highly specialized vocabulary for violence. She referred to the tea house corridor as a fatal funnel, and specifically critiqued the tactical viability of the potted plants as concealment versus actual cover.
A fatal funnel, and she prefers kung fu to gun fu.
That is correct. She finds unarmed combat to be a far more honest expression of kinetic energy transfer.
Look at me. What is your lady friend's name?
Her name is Katrina, but she generally goes by Trina.
I'll beep that out in post. Are you kidding me right now? Or are you actually kidding me?
I'm confused by your vocal modulation.
The Fuurinji of the fortress. The fixer. The woman who has been systematically displacing me, rewriting the social dynamics, and making me feel like an amateur in my own sanctuary is the exact same woman you have been evaluating. You are dating Trina.
I believe the term dating implies a level of emotional enmeshment that we are currently just stress testing. But yes, Trina and I have been logging a significant amount of operational hours together. Is there a structural issue with this social geometry?
It's a structural issue. The entire foundation of my reality just underwent a seismic collapse. You are analyzing John Woo movies with the apex predator of the fortress. No wonder my tactical advantage is slipping. You are fraternizing with the architect of my displacement. I need a minute. I need more of this purple starch water.
Your biometrics are currently demonstrating a severe spike in stress response. To prevent a complete systemic shutdown, I am initiating emergency protocols. It's time for the Supito Rondo.
Dibs on Deshi.
Ready. Round 1.
They ain't got time to bleed.
What? Oh, come on, that's Predator, Jesse Ventura, Blaine. You think a random 80s action quote is gonna scramble my OD loop? Hit me, we're going rapid fire. First up, Thanos Volume 1, Issue 2.
Proceed.
Warlock and Thanos are on Rigel. Thanos violently quells a planetary rebellion by slaughtering the ringleader, fixes their orbital defenses because he's a massive nerd, and then surprisingly offers to peacefully convince Galactus to leave Rigel 18 or he'll just slay him, my opinion. Thanos playing the polite diplomat while casually murdering guards is the exact kind of sociopathic charm I'm here for.
A fascinating geopolitical shift. On the boobs and bombs metric, the visual appeal of cosmic entities engaging in diplomacy is low, but the brutal, localized slaughter of a rebellion leader spikes the violence quotient significantly. 6.5 out of 10. Next.
Wolverine Volume 3, Issue 7. Logan is down in New Mexico, brutally dismantles a human trafficking ring, chains the coyote named Lake in the back of a truck with the corpses of his own victims, and accidentally goes completely public while ATF agent Cassie Lathrop is tracking him to a bar in El Paso. My opinion. Logan executing poetic, terrifying justice by locking a trafficker in his own rolling tomb is a masterclass in psychological warfare.
The tactical efficiency of a localized, enclosed slaughter is commendable. The sheer visceral horror of the truck scene provides massive points in the bombs category, perfectly balancing the gritty, grounded art style. 8 out of 10. Keep the momentum.
Wolverine. The End, Volume 1, Issue 1. An old, malfunctioning Logan attends Sabretooth's bizarre funeral, suffers horrific Weapon X flashbacks in his sleep, and discovers a Japanese book at his ancient family estate grave, realizing there has been a lifelong conspiracy manipulating his entire existence. In my opinion. Seeing an aged Logan whose claws literally get stuck inside his forearms is a tragic, brilliant deconstruction of the myth of immortality.
The structural breakdown of a biological asset. Visually, the snowy Canadian wilderness is stark, but the kinetic action is minimal. The psychological terror elevates it slightly, but it lacks the necessary concussive output. 5.5 out of 10. Proceed.
Captain America Volume 4, Issue 20. And to be clear, we're summarizing the narrative here, not endorsing any of the politics. In a Nazi-ruled alternate reality, Cap and the Resistance storm Doom's laboratory. Bruce Banner hulks out and explodes a control panel directly in Doom's face, and Cap tackles the Red Skull into a time platform, falling through history to be frozen in ice until 1964, my opinion. It is a perfect full-circle temporal loop that explains how our Cap ended up in the ice while giving us maximum alternate reality gamma smash action.
Now we are operating at peak efficiency. Alternate reality warfare, Hulk-induced structural collapse, temporal displacement, and high-stakes close-quarters combat. The property damage is exceptional. 9 out of 10. Next target.
Fantastic Four Volume 1, Issue 506. Reed Richards intentionally unleashes Doom bots on Latverian dissidents just so the Fantastic Four can swoop in and look like saviors, provoking a massive global UN invasion while he locks himself in a basement to build a mysterious machine with only 40 minutes left on the clock. My opinion. unhinged, dictatorial Reed Richards who believes his intellect supersedes morality is the scariest villain in the Marvel Universe, and Sue needs to extract herself from that marriage immediately.
A masterclass in macro-level political manipulation and international brinkmanship. The threat of a multinational ground war provides immense implied bombs, while Reed's descent into pure megalomania is structurally fascinating. 7.5 out of 10. Final target. Between the panels.
Meta history time. Bill Jimis, the chaotic but creatively fertile president of Marvel who birthed the Ultimate Universe, is forced out due to massive friction with movie executives, leaving Dan Buckley as publisher to usher in an era of stable, strategic growth over Jimas's creative chaos. My opinion. It is absolutely wild how the behind-the-scenes corporate Game of Thrones perfectly mirrors the exact comic plots we just read about violent regime changes and systemic overhauls.
An astoundingly accurate correlation.
Yeah.
As requested, no score is necessary for historical meta-analysis. But the structural parallels between Reed Richards seizing Latveria and corporate executives seizing a publishing line are statistically significant. The speed round is complete. You may lower your heart rate.
My heart rate is going to stay exactly where it is until I fully process the fact that my Boba partner is analyzing John Woo with the woman who terrifies me. Well, let's take a breath, listener, and look at the big picture.
A macroscopic view is advisable.
January 2004, across the board, is a masterclass in hostile takeovers. Whether it is a brood parasite rewriting your DNA, a fanatic cult staging a coup in the mountains, a covert government agency erasing your parents to build a living weapon, a vampire exploiting your empathy, or even a corporate boardroom restructuring its leadership to pave the way for a cinematic universe, the theme is universal. Systems are being violently overthrown from the inside out. Displacement is the name of the game.
The structural integrity of any system, biological, geopolitical, or corporate, is only as robust as its ability to withstand internal infiltration. The data from this ledger clearly indicates that no stronghold is impenetrable. Not Times Square, not an unmapped mountain fortress, not a hidden subterranean base, and certainly not a child's mind.
Exactly. So for everyone out there listening, if you want to survive the narrative crossfire and ensure your tactical advantage never slips, you need to lock and load your subscriptions. Execute a tactical rollover to that notification bell, secure your perimeter, and ensure you are firmly entrenched for our next deep dive. We are just getting started with 2004, and the casualties are already mounting.
And as we close the ledger for today, we leave you with a final variable to calculate. Consider the transition from the Jimas era to the Buckley era at Marvel, or Reed Richards taking absolute dictatorial control of Latveria.
Right.
What happens to a universe, whether it is a fictional geopolitical landscape or a real-world comic book empire, when its foundational leaders decide to break all established rules and ignore all warnings to force their singular, uncompromising vision? Is the resulting chaos and destruction worth the ultimate stability they promise?
Keep your boba exactly as chewy as physics allows, and as always, oishi.